Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens, where you don't have to draw, but you have to love fountain pens. I focus on art and design and my love of pens. As always, please subscribe if you find the video useful. I just got back from the Philly Pen Show. It is Sunday. The show has been running from Friday, January 12th to today, January 14th. This is my Philadelphia story. What I mean by that is I didn't go to the pen show to review it. I went there to have a good time, and I only have a limited amount of time, so I was there a half a day on Friday and a half a day on Saturday, and I did not get a chance to see everything. I did not go to the seminars hosted by Aziza Ascarelli of Gourmet Pens or Michael Ward, the calligrapher. I did go to the panel on Friday night, which I'll say some more about it. I think it's important to remember that when you watch a lot of these recaps on YouTube, that they're done often by very passionate people who are very involved in the industry, and so they go to everything, and they're there maybe for the entire weekend, or maybe even they're a pen dealer, or they write about pens. And the average person, I think, may only go for a day, even though they love pens like me, and don't have quite that same experience. So, you have to keep that in mind. Why, if you're planning to go to a pen show, what do you want to get out of it? This is my fourth pen show now. So I'm not a fountain pen show virgin, but I'm not somebody who's been going to them for years and years. I have to say this is the first time that I felt completely comfortable, and really now I know a lot of people there, and it wasn't very crowded. I went on a Friday, which is sort of the time when you pay a little bit extra, and it's more geared towards dealers, people who have the time off. You have to take the time off, right? You may be working. And so it's not very crowded. I also think it's worth paying extra so you can get into the pen show an hour early so you can beat the crowds. This is really important if you're going to go to the biggest show, which is Washington, which is just immense, or even the Baltimore show is much bigger. I'm not sure why this show was so small. I think it's ideal because it's in downtown Philadelphia. The other shows I've been to have all been in the suburbs, and you have to drive. This one, I live in New Haven, so I could take Amtrak. It takes, in theory, around 3 hours to get from New Haven to Philadelphia, and then it's just less than a mile walk from the train station to the Sheridan downtown, which is where the pen show was. Unfortunately, there was some kind of mysterious delay that shut down all the trains between New York and Washington for about an hour and a half, so I was late. I was at the pen show by 2 o'clock and started looking around. One of the first people I saw was Scott Jones, who's a wonderful artist who does a different drawing every day and uses fountain pens, vintage fountain pens. He's an incredible expert on fountain pens, particularly really early ones. And he sells at the shows books of those drawings. And so it's nice to see him and talk with him. And then, of course, I had to go immediately to Schon Dsgn. The Schon Dsgn studio is located in Philadelphia, so they're sort of like, they have pride of place, and Ian Schon is kind of the rock star, I think, of fountain pens. He is originally was an engineer and got into making the pens himself, and has developed a workshop where they make really beautiful steel pens. And what's exciting is this year he started making the Monarch nib. I was an early buyer of the Monarch nib, and I have a very long review of it. I don't, and I think it's great. I'm not quite so thrilled with the very simple black a barrel pen that came with it. So I was there to buy one of his beautiful anodides. This is a full-size pen, and now it has my Monarch nib on it, and it just looks beautiful. So that's quite an improvement, I think, from the black version, which is elegant, but a bit dull. Anyway, so this is the first purchase that I made, and I also was able to talk to him for a while.
So today at the Philly show, we have some multicolor anodized Monarch titanium nibs.
Right.
And we have these in our medium size. We also brought some fine nibs and some experimental stub nibs, which we're working on. Mm-hmm. The pen show is a great place to gather feedback from customers and friends, learn what is and isn't working, so that I don't just design something for myself, I design it for people in the community. So
Cool.
we have a lot of fun today.
Right. And then I was so interested that you started out as an engineer. Well, you studied engineering, and then you got into fountain pens because people, not because you yourself write or draw.
I was making ballpoint pens and went to a pen show, and people were showing me all these fountain pens, and I thought to myself, well, what's missing from this community? And I thought, wow, it'd be really great to focus on pocket pens.
Right.
And from pocket pens, full-size pens, from full-size pens, eventually nibs.
Right. But it's also the way you anodize the... Yes. So how did that come about?
Well, I mean, the anodizing is the way we get our, the colors on our titanium parts.
Right.
And also there's another process where we do anodizing on our aluminum parts to get multicolors. So.
But what inspired you to do that? You just thought?
It's a conventional process in other niches that involve machine parts, but it wasn't as prevalent here. So again, it enabled me to have kind of my own thing and explore color. I don't know, in a way that didn't feel competitive. It felt like I was really bringing something new to the community.
Well, I mean, the idea, I know that not every pen maker can make their own nibs, but it's a huge thing to do that, Right, so congratulations.
Thank you.
In the past shows, he's always been wearing a mask to protect against COVID, but on Friday, and it's on Saturday as well, he was no longer wearing a mask, and it was fun to talk to him. He has all these plans to do new versions of the nib, and even to do a kind of pen that would be almost all nib. It would go from nib and to the barrel, and would perhaps be one piece or a more of a seamless design. So that was interesting to talk to him about that. I talked to Tom, the pen man, and he told me a story about the very first pen that he had ever used. Could you say that thing about Bic pens that you said to me about how your first pen was a Bic fountain pen? I found that
fascinating. 1966 in a college bookstore.
Right.
It was white plastic with the purple school logo up the side.
Right.
You put two short international cartridges in it. The second one would be reversed, so it's your spare tank, so to speak.
And that's how you fell in love with fountain pens? Was that your first?
It was my first fountain pen, right.
Right, and did you fall in love, or it's a...
No, it was painful, because most of them leaked.
Exactly,
badly.
Right. I was a big fan of the Sheaffer student pen. I thought those were pretty, they were much more reliable.
Very nice.
Right. So how did you get into the Pelican world?
I was in the working world then, and I was on the board of directors of the Charlotte Repertory Theater, and the lady next to me got an M800 green and black for her birthday from her husband. I said, I like that one. Then I was on a business trip, and I bought my first one in Arkansas from, Lisa Van Ness.
Oh, right.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
It
I've
was
seen their
72,
ads.
74, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It was all downhill from there.
I know. It's like there's a woman who sells donuts in New Lyme, and the minute you eat one of her donuts, she says, "Now you're in trouble." And then at 4:00, I had an appointment with Joshua Lax, the nibmeister, an expert on fountain pens, and I sat at his table and sort of also watched as he worked on other people's pens. There was a woman there, a young woman, who had an incredible pen, a Lamy, called the Lamy Lady pen, which is kind of sexist, but it's a pen that I've never seen before. That was a collaboration with the China maker Rosenthal. It's quite of an expensive pen. She was proud to have recently gotten it. So that was kind of fun. And that's the kind of thing that you get to see at pen shows. You see pens that you never knew existed, or pens that you've heard of, and you actually get to hold them and look at them. And then also you get to talk to people. I was also kind of surprised that there were quite a few young people at the show, even selling pens, but also obviously walking around and looking at pens. So that I think is interesting that I think more and more young people are beginning to get into this whole phenomenon. So that evening there was a panel hosted actually or moderated by Joshua Lax that included Scott Jones. It included Myk from Mad Mercantile Pens, and Paul Erano, who is an editor of the Fountain Pen Journal and has written a book on fountain pens, and David Isaacson, who is an expert on Parker pens. He's a dealer, and he also founded the Facebook Fountain Pen group, which is huge now. I understand he said there was over 50,000 members. So, and the topic was really interesting. It was on sort of recent vintage pens, if that makes sense, or not so old vintage pens. And David talked about this word vintage. You know, where did it come from? It obviously comes from wines, and the idea of a vintage wine is it's a wine that is made from grapes that all come from the same year. But the word, particularly on places like eBay, has come to mean almost like old, or maybe not as old as an antique is old, meaning maybe 100 years of something that's vintage could be 50 years old, right? It seems to be used very loosely, sometimes to mean a pen that is no longer being made. That might be the way in which it could be used, meaning, you know, you can't just order it up anymore. And if it's being used in that way, it doesn't necessarily mean a pen from 1910 or 20 or 30s, but could easily mean a pen from the 1990s. And I think the idea of the panel was to make people think about how collecting fountain pens doesn't mean you have to collect really old fountain pens. In fact, I'm interested in pens that are from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I like thinking about contemporary design and modern design. So the word vintage really has an expanded kind of meaning. A lot of the panel was talking about different pens that are kind of ignored but are really cool. The fact that that you could get sometimes the same kind of pen, but if you get it in black, it costs less money than if it's a color. There was a lot of discussion about how someone who is new to collecting can get involved in fountain pen collecting. And that's one of the interesting things about fountain pen collectors. We're always trying to get people ensnared in this addiction and proselytizing. There was a heated discussion about whether, if you're new to fountain pens, whether, you know, the best place to learn about fountain pens is a pen show. And I actually spoke up and said that I had initially been quite intimidated going to pen shows and found it a little scary to talk to pen dealers and pen dealers on the panel were like, oh, well, why would you be? We love talking about it. But I think Josh particularly pointed out that this is something that people say. And, I also pointed out that you feel a little bit under obligation if you talk to somebody who's a dealer at a show to buy something. And that makes it a little bit intimidating. I think it was Paul who made the point, though, that almost everybody who's selling the pens, this isn't necessarily their job, their only job, let's put it that way. I don't know exactly the percentage, but a lot of people, like David Isaacson is a doctor, or they're retired, and so it's not something that they're dependent upon to make a living, but they're doing it because they love it, they're passionate about it, and it pays, to buy more pens, and it justifies their collecting, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's something worth thinking about, right? Still there's a time factor, and I have to say, I think the Philadelphia Pen Show was, at least on Friday and Saturday, was not very crowded, which made it ideal for talking to people and getting to know them. The one group that wasn't so well represented were the people like Jonathan Brooks wasn't there, Sean Newton wasn't there, Alfonso Smith of Derail Pens wasn't there. In other words, the small companies where usually one or two people, and they make their own pens by turning the pens. This was not their show, really. There were a few people. Greg Hardy from Hardy Penwrights was there. I spoke to him on Saturday.
Fancier things. I have this Trillium pen. It's got some fairly extensive metalwork. It's certainly not the craziest work I've done.
And is that part of sort of the part that you like to do the most?
That's the part I like most.
Right.
And in fact, we're transitioning now where a lot of the production equipment will go to my son's shop. And he will work from home, and that's going to free up space for me to.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a family endeavor.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Cool.
It really is.
Oh, excellent.
I'm blessed that I like working with my son. Not everyone would.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
There were several of those makers, but not the wide variety that I saw in both Baltimore and at the DC Pen Show, where everybody was there. They basically had a whole room devoted just to those types of pens, right? This was more focused on vintage pen dealers. There were some big companies. Pilot was there. There was middle size like Franklin Christoph. There was Navalar was there. Jovo Nibs had a representative and a wide array of their nibs. There were some stationery stores. Interestingly, Fountain Pen Hospital was there, or the original owner was there selling really some interesting pens at really sale prices. So, it was small. It was actually closer in size to the Boston Pen Show, which was my first pen show. So that I felt that was very nice and very comfortable and made it very successful. One thing to keep in mind if you're going to a pen show and you have work that you want it done by a nibmeister on your pen is to see how they schedule and whether you can sign up for an appointment ahead of time. This was not a crowded show, so you could go to Josh kind of at the last minute, but in other shows you'd be out of luck. So really, if you're going to a pen show ahead of time, sign up ahead of time. It'll save you time, and you'll get in there. Other people that I spoke to, it was really delightful to talk to Jonathan Steinberg and his wife. Jonathan Steinberg is also author of a book on two books on fountain pens, and it was charming to speak with him. I was able on Saturday to sit down with Paul Erano, who is the editor of the Fountain Pen Journal, and we talked for quite a while, and he convinced me to subscribe to the journal, so I went away with 3 issues of the journal. I recommend it.
So I'm getting videotaped here.
Yes.
My name is Paul Erano, or Erano, and
Well, wait a second. Don't you prefer one way or the other?
well, you know, I've been getting both for so long, but Erano.
Erano. Okay.
So I've been collecting. You want me to want a little biography?
Yeah, sure.
I've been collecting pens for about 40 years. I've written books on fountain pens. I published magazines on fountain pens, vintage pens. I was the editor for the PCA, and I've written for most of the pen magazines.
Hold this up.
This is a current issue of my magazine. It's called the Fountain Pen Journal.
Cool.
It covers basically all aspects of the hobby.
Excellent.
I interview contemporary pen artisans, and there's also a lot of information in here on vintage pens. So
Excellent.
it comes out 3 times a year, and it's $35.
And what's your first pen experience? Why did you get it?
It's been so long. I've been doing this for about 40 years.
Yeah. So, but
It's
what?
hard to remember. Well, actually, I kind of do, because you know, if you're a collector, you just don't collect one thing.
Yes.
You collect several things. I'm kind of like a pro. If it's shiny, I tend to pick it up.
Exactly.
So I was collecting pocket knives, and pocket knives kind of dwindled out because everybody was collecting pocket knives. So I said, you know, I love fountain pens. I'm a writer, and I love fountain pens. So rather than going out to flea markets or garage sales and getting skunked, if I saw a fountain pen, I'd pick it up, and I'd have something. Or if I saw a camera, then I could trade it for a pocket knife. So then I just started writing with fountain pens, especially with vintage pens. And I said, oh my God, these things are beautiful. You know, and I had no idea that there are other people who like fountain pens. So then I'd get it home and I'd try to fill it up with ink, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I had a Parker vacuum bag.
Wow.
And it took me, the thing is so well made, it took me a year to figure out how to unscrew it, because I never saw that it had a blind cap on the end. It was just perfectly matched. So then the thing seemed to work, but it wouldn't fill up with ink. So then I had to take the pen apart and figure out what was wrong with it. So this is what we used to do in the old days. We would actually take our pens apart, we would fix them ourselves. A lot of times when we went to the pen shows originally, we would never repair pens. We would never clean them, because everybody knew exactly what it was and they knew how to do it, just like I did.
Yeah.
So that was a heyday of it back in the 80s and 90s. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. So that's how it all started for me. And I remember I'd pick up a pen for a couple of dollars at a flea market or a garage sale, and I'd go to a pen show and I'd sell the thing for $200. I said, are you kidding? Pay $2, sell it for $200? It's not a bad return.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of paid for my hobby and for the cost of it. You know, spending 3 days in a hotel at a pen show.
Right.
And then it just snowballed. And then, I mean...
And is that all you do? Is not all you do, but do you make a living through fountain pens, or do you do something else?
This is a hobby.
And what is your regular?
I've been retired for about 20 years. I used to work for the state health department. I used to certify facilities.
Interesting.
Right. So that's what I used to do. And I'm a frustrated writer.
Yeah.
So you know, the writing is important.
Yeah. No.
And
no.
I like the writing.
And I ended up with Myk Daigle, Mad Mercantile pens, and I ended up buying another of the guy's pens, this time in its original plastic tube, and I got a good deal on that. That was my last purchase.
Who are Myk Daigle?
Okay.
And my little pen business is Mad Mercantile. But I'm very happy to have this pen go to someone who appreciates it.
Yes.
1 year pen, 1969 only, as I recall.
Right.
And nothing is interchangeable with the no nonsense.
That's with the pre-no nonsense because it's sort of like
Yeah.
it's not really yet the no nonsense.
Yeah.
It's almost the no nonsense.
And the gals didn't have a pocket clip; it had a cord that they
Went
would
around
wear
the
their neck. Yeah,
Very sexist.
and they're very almost as bad as the pen for men.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a lady Sheaffer over there too. They did that back then. Yeah, very sexist. But it's beautiful. The artwork is cool.
Yeah, the colors are really beautiful, and it's a peculiar acrylic, actually.
Yeah.
So how did you get into fountain pens?
I went to an antique shop, and there was a box of pens about this big.
Right.
And I was eBaying as a hobby, and I put them on eBay, and they went crazy. Auctions went crazy. I'm like, whoa. And I had always liked a good pen,
Right.
so I'm like, let's find more pens. So, and I Googled, and there was a pen show. I'm like, there's a pen show?
Right.
And there I was, going to the Chicago Pen Show, coming home with another big box of pens. And then someone said, you could probably get more money for these if you fixed them. Then I learned to fix them. And I just fell into the world. I love it. I love it.
And is this what you do? Is it, or are you a lawyer who does this or something?
No, this is what I do.
Oh, cool. I think you're the first person I've spoken to that's the case.
This is all I do.
That's the case.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
does it as a side.
I'm going to the California Pen Show next month, the Baltimore Pen Show the month after that, and we're just
You're
arranging
a fixture.
this pen show, and I did a bunch of European pen shows last November.
And your sidekick is Scott.
Scott the artist, yes. Scott, he's an amazing artist, and he loves to do his work with fountain pens, as you
And
know.
Alina works with you?
Alina is kind of like an
Can I film you?
apprentice and a good friend, and she knows her Japanese pens.
Oh,
She
cool.
can tell you what limited edition Japanese pen came from which stationery shop and what year.
Cool.
You know, she just,
Cool. Excellent. All right. Well, wonderful.
I also spoke to the representative from Jovo Nibs, who has his own small pen company called Mondu Pens, which I think is brand new. That was sort of my surprise buy. I bought a really beautiful pen that I hope to review later. It came in a nice box. And in general, I was kind of proud of myself that I didn't go crazy buying a lot of different pens. I bought two pens that, the one from Schon Dsgn and the guy's pens that I was really looking for, and one sort of surprising thing, but I didn't break the bank. There weren't also a lot of people selling expensive new pens. I mean, there was some of that, but it wasn't anything like Washington. In terms of seeing so many super expensive pens and big companies, et cetera, et cetera. In general, it was a very enjoyable experience, not intimidating, and I felt at the end that I kind of belonged there and knew people, and then the next time I come, I will know more people, and it'll be a bit more like a kind of reunion. Which is nice. It's a very nice feeling. So I thought it was, for me, a big success. My Philadelphia story was a big success.